So, in the last leg of our conversation, I would like to talk about AI, right? Because in this business model,
Yes.
I see many implications at many levels.
Mhm.
So, maybe talk from very, very high level.
Sure.
When did you see? Um, I'm sure you were already using some level of ML
Yes.
models
Yes.
for many, many years before this hype. Models have been around for last 50 years, 60 years, even before that. So how did you see that changing your business model or your the way you were interacting with customers and suppliers of information both?
So first, I agree. There's a lot of hype around it, and which is what happens typically with any new technology.
Yeah.
The same with .com we spoke about. There was a lot of pets.com or something. There were many examples of that at that time. Yeah. But is there a true value in it? Yes, there was true value in it. Yeah. I believe the new AI, which is the Gen AI, is going through that similar phase as of now. There is a lot of hype, but there is true value in it. Now, stepping back, when we started the platform of Quantify, but the very initial models we wrote in machine learning was to classify information. Is this business relevant or not? So this was traditional machine learning models. We train them with our data. We then use it to extract names of the people, names of the companies, names of locations from it. It was a probability-based models. These are all probability-based models.
Correct.
Without much context about what is happening around, but in what context this word is used. So, for example, in the very initial days, we were struggling with Boston Consulting Group was tagged with a Boston location. Right, which was wrong, even if the word is there, but the context is not as a location, it was context of a company.
Correct.
Right? This was simpler problem in the machine learning space. The much more complex problems were, is this a negative news or a sentiment, for example? Yeah. Oh, very well said. Was it sarcastic or was it said in a positive way? Yeah. So we were struggling with these problems since day one, which means we were building a lot of machine learning models. We were making progress. As simple as things of removing duplicates. Identifying these two pieces of information are talking about the same thing was very challenging. One of the most challenging part in the engine that we have was duplicates. Yeah?
Right.
Group them together. We were able to achieve to a certain level where there were companies, there were pieces of information. You can select the filters and you say, okay, this is what the information is about, the partnerships of my competitors. These are the new launches by my customers. These are the management changes in this industry sector. You can do a high level categorizations, and out of the lot of information on the internet, you can still get very few selective articles. This is where we were before Gen AI, a level of packaging, a level of cleaning. But Gen AI, the core of Gen AI is basically the transformer model, where the words before it and after it is all connected together. And these large language models have kind of made it the context to a much larger. Yeah? This is transformational technology. Yeah? The way now a text is analyzed by a machine, by an algorithm, is so far more advanced than what we were able to achieve for so many years that you can have now specific questions. Yeah. Okay. We all have used chat GPTs, but the chat GPT is a very one manifestation of a large language model.
Correct.
And it is not Gen AI. It is just one of the manifestations of Gen AI. The models, which are large language models, and thanks to Mark Zuckerberg, the Llama and the open source models that they have released, they are very powerful.
Yeah.
Now the future, what I see is that there will be applications built on these large language models, the language models. The companies who are actually build good applications with some kind of moat around it, which is that it was difficult to build because of the limitations of large language models. Yeah, the large language models are designed for language processing. They are not designed for accuracy. You cannot assume that when ChatGPT is saying something, or it's a hallucination problem that we're talking about. Now, how do you control that to a level that your business use case is met at a very satisfactory level?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, this is where the kind of things are going in the future, where the controlling these language models to specific use cases, where there is a real value to the end user, which is coming through, will make a difference between success and the hype driven companies. The the problem is that it's very easy to get started. So many people or companies are thinking that by just doing this, we got this image. By just doing this, we got this video. By just doing this. But once you start thinking about production quality software based on these language models, then where you start seeing that, oh, it doesn't work in many cases. And how you are covering that. There are many layers of software wrappers or other kind of wrappers which are required to be developed around that core intelligence of a transformer, which wrappers are designed for use cases. Now, for what business use case are you solving this using these large language models will differentiate. We are solving our use case in the space of competitive intelligence. Once we have the reviews of a company's product, we can very easily, very accurately extract the reviews which are the strengths of the product and the where the product is lacking.
Correct.
To a fairly high level of degree.
So if we think about the progression of different phases, right? So we went from rudimentary ML model to the next phase, which was, in your case, was some kind of advancement. And then you went to now models large language models, which can process large amount of information.
Yeah.
And now the next phase will be towards accuracy.
Yes.
And narrow use cases.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Absolutely.
That's where we are at.
Absolutely.
So yeah. I am imagining somebody like Bloomberg already has a product which is trained on their data.
Yes.
Which will be, let's say, listed companies since 1930s or before. Yes. That's the only database which gives you that data. And training that for that narrow use case.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Bloomberg has built their own language models. So they have trained their data.
Correct.
Training a language model is a very expensive task. Only few companies can do it. Training from scratch. So that's what Bloomberg did with their own data.
Yeah. Right. And so there is also this, well, I don't know if it's reality or myth, that you need a lot of data to train a good model.
For machine learning, yes, we can say for machine learning, but for large language models, you need a lot of processing also required. These GPU war that you were talking about, there's a lot of data required. There's a lot of GPUs required to train that, but that's not a viable business for a lot of companies who are doing business applications. If you're a technology company, then you might want to consider building your own language model, train it from scratch, but not if you are a business applications company.
Right. But there are companies which are giving you now off-the-shelf kind of language models, and then you can tweak it and make it specific, right?
I also feel that people should not try for fine-tuning. This is something which is a lot written about, talked about. Influencers on YouTube just jump on it and say, this is so easy, you should do it. We have not seen good results. And once you fine-tune a model, it's very difficult to control that also. So there are two ways to influence a model. Yeah. One is this fine-tune, add your own data layer. Second is using RAG architecture, retrieval augmented generation, where you use the model's capabilities for language processing, not for the knowledge.
Okay.
For the knowledge, you have your own database.
So what does RAG mean for someone who is not well versed, let's say, with language models?
So for an example, when you ask a language model a question, for example, ChatGPT, you are tapping into the knowledge of ChatGPT. You are tapping into what went into the training of ChatGPT, and you're asking for an answer.
Yeah? Correct.
When I'm using a RAG, you are using a language model for not the knowledge. When I say RAG, it means when a question is asked, there is a layer of software in between. The software is understanding the question, which in technical terms is saying converting the text of a question into an embeddings, which is basically a vector, and doing a search on the data that you have already, which is, again, we have to store data in a vector database, not in a text or a numeric database. It's all in terms of vectors. It's easier for language processing when you store it in vectors. So a RAG architecture is a question is asked. The answer is not asked from a language model. The answer is first went into your own vector database.
Okay.
and see what are the vectors closest to this question. You get those vectors, which is a limited set of all the data that you have, and then you pass those vectors and question to a GPT model or a language model.
Okay. So you are adding a buffer layer kind of in the middle.
The knowledge layer.
Knowledge layer.
Yes.
Okay.
You are not relying on the knowledge of a chat GPT pre-trained model. You say this is the question, these are the possible answers, and give me the answers. Do not go beyond these that what I'm giving to you. That's your prompt. Do not add anything additional. If the answer is not here, say I don't know the answer. There's not sufficient information is not available. So you are using language model for the language capabilities, not for knowledge. The knowledge is all driven through a vector database with your question transformed into a vector. This is where how you are converting a query, an English query, into a vector is called embeddings. Correct. So what embeddings are you using to convert that question, and what embedding are you using to store your own data? That is the important part.
Right.
And this is where the fine tuning of your wrapper will happen.
So just zooming out, right, from the venture building perspective, how do you think, well, none of us know the future, but right now, because there is so much hype, right, especially the funding cycle where we are at last 2 years, post COVID, that's another wave which we saw was AI funding, right? And last year, even this year, I've seen founders returning money to investors when they realize, okay, there is no point of building this product because I'm not going to be able to commercialize it, right? So how do you see that? How do you see, how should founders think about building around AI? Second is, how do you define long-term value? Because when I meet founders building around AI, either I find founders building for very, very narrow use cases, or they are talking very generic, right? Let's say somebody, I met recently, who is building around contextualized AI. The use case is pretty much everywhere, right? So how should we think about long-term value, or is there even willingness to pay at the end of the line? You think somebody is going to adapt? So how do you think? Obviously, a lot of these startups will fail. More than 99% will fail. But still, that's not the reason why founders should not start, right?
Absolutely.
Because Google started when there were already like 100,000 other browser search engines trying to build, right? They survived. So what is your take on this, the current hype, and how it will unfold?
Yeah, I think I will take a bet on the founder, not on the technology or the use case. At this, if I'm an early stage investor, the characteristics. So I'll give in multiple, I think 2 or 3 answers to this question. One is one of the best investors that I have worked with, equity investors, not venture investors. Now when they do a research on a company, the first thing they start is with the promoters, and they say, okay, what is the history of the promoter? How credible they are? Is it worth to our investment or not? So this is how I would start with the founder also, that, okay, what is the history and what is the background? But then the question is, there will be a lot of changes will happen in the journey if you're making a long-term bet with the founder. What initial current problem statement they have picked. Long-term will happen upon the founder's characteristic and the agility and a lot of other things. But what is the problem statement they have picked right now to solve? How clear they are in terms of the customer problem? My biases are B2B still, and even for small businesses, for example, if you don't say large enterprises, for small, they are building something, the evaluation of the depth of their knowledge of the problem statement is one angle. I will go deeper. How well they understand the problem. Is it something they have heard, they have read, or is it something that they actually understand? Everything starts from what problem, how deeply you understand it. There are many ways to reach that problem, but the better you understand, there will be, you will find a way to reach there. With the problem comes the other parameters is why it is not solved. It's not that he's the first time figuring out a problem. Unless it's a new technology investment, that's a totally different ballgame. We are not even talking about that, right? It's a business problem we're talking about that we are trying to solve, right? Second comes that the technology which is now available in terms of the new technologies which are available, the mapping the two how well this technology is suited for that problem statement that the founder is trying to solve. Understanding of technology as a venture, I would be investing more time in understanding really how this technology works. And for me, I still code on the weekends, and sometimes I go to for hotel check-in for 2 days just doing coding. Is that
Wow.
without that I cannot develop an intuitive understanding of what is possible or what is not. So RAG I was talking about, not even talk about it, but how actually it works. Unless I see one question's embeddings and seeing the answer coming from the database and then going to the GPT, if I don't see it with my own eyes, I will not be able to develop an understanding or smell of how it's working. Yeah. So first is the problem statement. Second is that how deeply you understand how technology is working. And then comes the how easy it will be for others to create something similar. Is it just technology is ready to solve this problem? Or is it something requires certain kind of a packaging layering, which is a moat around it that has to be created so that it can be sustainable in long term?
Yeah, I think on AI we should do a separate conversation because it's a very deep subject. But as a parting thought, I wanted your take on bootstrapping. Because that is something which you have done as an entrepreneur. Why do you think founders should still think about bootstrapping in the age and times when funding is available through angel networks, through VCs, through other avenues?
Sure.
Friends and family are also now willing to give you money because founders have some kind of social capital, right?
Yes.
So why do you think bootstrapping is still relevant? And part two is how should people actually execute it?
So one reason is that after I think your wife, the second most important decision is your investor, who is going to be on your cap table and how it's going to work. But besides that, the wrong reasons to raise capital is thinking that by throwing money you will solve problem. The reason to raise a capital is that you have figured out the other components of building an organization or building a business, and you are now know that for this you need capital for this reason. This is what you need capital for, not because others have raised capital and we will also need it. So I have also always seen that when you work within constraints that you have around, you figure out a creative solution. And hiring expensive people or having offices, sometimes people spend money on those things, is many times a waste of resources, which is not required many times. You have once you start a capital, assuming that you have raised a capital and you knew this is why you need the capital for, there is a time horizon now that the funding is for X number of years, and you have to generate certain value next numbers of years, and then have a next round or do something which is the conclusion of that venture capital. I've heard about it, not seen it personally, is that there are family offices with a very long term now investment horizon. Yeah. When I say bootstrap versus venture, my only view is that the person who is gonna influence your decision making in the company has to be very important. The interests are to be aligned. That's one. Second is the horizon on which you are walking to create a long-term sustainable business has to be more than just for a few years, for 3, 4, 5 years, more than that. Yeah. So if those things are aligned, which is the investor, the right investor who can help you actually build organizations because they have a know-how, they have done it, they know the space, and they have a long-term horizon to be with you, to help you succeed and build a good organization, that then it's better to go for funding. Take that money.
If you have that match.
If you're not able to find that, and you think that somebody will give me money, I just need the money, right? And with this money, I will hire this person. I will get the superstar developers. I will travel and have booths in the events in the US, and then the business will grow. That's a wrong reason to go for funding. Yeah. So I find bootstrapping is a very difficult journey. It's very difficult, but less difficult than misaligned investors or misaligned co-founders. But a journey with a right investor and the right time horizon will be much efficient and less eventful as compared to bootstrapping.
And there is some value creation, not value destruction.
Exactly.
That's also a real thing.
Absolutely.
If you have,
True.
investors on your cap table and your interests are not aligned, I've seen some creative things happen which don't create any value.
I have my very good friend who's an investor told me that, Mohit, if we have to close a business, we will close it because it's not making sense for us. We have 20 other business to look after. But for you, that's the only business. So, sorry. But we cannot continue with this, right? So an investor for them is very dispassionate. They don't work with your team. They don't work with the, so sometimes what I find is that the alignment with the who is influencing your decisions is very important. And it's not always it's a very important word, alignment, not that we just get along so well. It's much more deeper than that.
So yeah, these are interesting lessons and thank you for your time. I think there is two conversations which are emerging from this. One is around AI. Would love to sit down with you in the coming months, and then second around bootstrapping, I think but requires more focused discussion. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming and giving your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. Yeah, thank you.